During the last years of his life, lead singer of the rock band Nirvana and Generation X icon Kurt Cobain struggled with heroin addiction and chronic health problems such as depression. He also struggled with the personal and professional pressures of fame and his marriage to musician Courtney Love. On April 8, 1994, Cobain was found dead at his home in Seattle at the age of 27. Police concluded he had died on April 5th from a self-inflicted shotgun wound to his head. This suicide shocked the world and the music industry for years to come. Earlier the year before, Vince Ebo, a former session singer and member of Charlie Peacock's acoustic trio, cut his career short when he took his own life in late 1993. Vince sang on many jingles and was lead vocalist for The Fit. Concerning his involvement in the Christian music scene, Ebo didn't want to be referred to as a gospel singer. He said, "I'm just a singer, and I've found that the Lord is right for me. I want to be one whose example says, I've got God in my life, and that's why I'm smiling. I want people to look at me and say, hey, check this cat out." He died at the age of 39. His method of suicide I couldn't find in any research, but Vince was buried in California just before Christmas in December of 1993, and a memorial service was held in Nashville on January 4th, 1994. These were the events that would inspire Peter Furler, then co-lead vocalist and drummer for Christian band the Newsboys, to write the haunting track, Elle. Going Public was the fifth studio album from the Newsboys, released in 1994. After their first breakout success with their previous album, Not Ashamed, Going Public would only further their success and popularity, most of it thanks to their biggest hit from that album and one of their biggest hits of all time, Shine. The album was recognized with 2 Dove Awards at the 25th GMA Dove Awards, one for Rock Album of the Year and the other Rock Recorded Song of the Year for Shine, as well as nominations for Short Film Music Video of the Year and Song of the Year. Going Public was also nominated for a Grammy for Best Rock Gospel Album. Going Public has been recognized by many as being one of the greatest Christian albums of all time. It was highly influential, and Blaze Magazine said that modern Christian artists owe a lot to the path this album created, because it showed music from a godly perspective could sound extremely catchy, have lyrics that were honest, and still glorify God. And while the album is filled with many upbeat songs like Shine, Real Good Thing, and Truth and Consequences, and even more worshipful songs like Be Still and Let It Rain, the members of the Newsboys decided to end the album with one of the most haunting and one of the most underrated songs in Newsboys history, Elle. Elle, most likely meaning to be the name of the woman of which the song is about, is a play on the word elegy, which is a poem of serious reflection, typically a lament for the dead. And that makes total sense considering the subject matter of the song. In an interview, Peter Furler explained the story behind the song. It's just about a guy and what he goes through when he's lost someone he loves. It could have been his mom, or his girlfriend, or his wife. It wasn't anybody in particular. But it was really written about how there can be people around us hurting and going through things. It was like the death of Kurt Cobain, and even a Christian artist in America called Vince Ebo, who committed suicide. I was shocked at hearing about Kurt Cobain's suicide. His wife, in 10 years' time, might be able to have helped him, but he won't be around then. As she gets older and 40 years old, she may remember him as a confused young man and maybe have some answers for him, but it would be too late. I think the hurt that she would go through will be tremendous. I realized I could have been there. Peter then began to explain his personal struggles involving depression and suicide. I saw myself in John James, the lead singer, when we first started. We had a choice on a path, a couple of paths we could have chosen. We started playing in the pubs and the clubs. I saw if we hadn't have found Christ, we could have ended up that way, one of us, especially John. I can see if it wasn't for Christ in our lives, then I probably would have blown my head off too. There are days when you get depressed, especially making records. You feel like you're not putting what you meant to be onto tape. Making this record was hard. There were days when I was reading without any thinking. It enters your mind. If it wasn't for Christ, maybe I would have committed suicide. That was the way it affected me more than anything. So many people who aren't famous still killed themselves, and I think seeing that really brought it to light. Kurt was my age. He was a musician, and we have other things in common. So the narrator begins this song sympathizing with the loneliness his lost love must have felt in verse 1.
Thumbs out on a desert road, I am told, leads to nowhere. Any shade is as good as the next if your shadow doesn't go there.
He then expresses his frustration and feelings of abandonment with the loss of this woman while simultaneously revealing the gruesome method of her suicide.
Week 7, did you really assume I find some solace from the letter in your room? Next life, could you kindly refrain from throwing yourself at the mercy of a train?
He continues with this frustration in the first chorus, still feeling abandoned and seemingly lamenting on why this woman didn't try to get more help to cure her depression, which he obviously knew she was going through. But he then switches his attitude, crying out that he would do a better job of helping her and listening to her if she were to come back, which is obviously a natural feeling when going through a loss of this kind.
Silence, oh, nobody breathe. How in the world could you just leave? You promised you would. Silence had evil with good. Hear me out, I have the floor. I'll give you my tears, I'll listen more. You promised you would. Overcome evil with good.
In verse 2, the narrator seems to be arguing, so to speak, with Elle, even though she has passed.
Maybe this world is a barren place for a soul prone to get lost, but heaven still hounds from the smallest sounds to the cries of the storm-tossed.
It's like he's saying, you know what? Maybe life is going to be littered with loneliness and confusion. Maybe we're all doomed to feel that at some point or another, but that isn't an excuse because God still cares about our smallest problems and is always there for us. I can't imagine his frustration. He probably feels like she wasn't trying hard enough and wasn't trusting God enough like she should. And these feelings are very common, especially in relation to the suicide of a fellow believer. It may seem insensitive towards the person who has taken their life, but it is normal. The verse continues with the narrator pondering over whether there was anything that he missed that could have prevented this tragedy.
Week 9, I am writing in the sand, but any little clue that could help me understand every whispered secret, every muffled sigh, every half-truth that was added to the lie.
As we go into the second chorus, we return to all the frustration that the narrator is feeling and his remorse. He's asking, what was the point of this? How did this accomplish anything? You said that you were trusting God and that you were going to do your best to overcome this.
Silence, oh, nobody move. I gotta know now what you hope to prove. You promised you would. Silence had evil with good.
As we go into the bridge, the narrator is now at a point of pleading and desperation. He asks that if he could, he would take her place in death. He was worried for her fate in the afterlife and begs God to be merciful to her.
Every old demon playing back the crowd. If they needed blood, I'd gladly give it mine. A child of the kingdom, still an invalid. Forgive her, please, Father, she don't know what she did.
The question of suicide has always been a hard and painful subject, especially when it comes to the suicide of fellow believers. Do Christians who commit suicide go to heaven? Are they protected by salvation? Can we know if they knew what they were doing when they committed the fatal act? Were they of their right minds? To some people, and to most Christians especially, suicide is considered a form of murder. When someone commits suicide, they are taking someone's life, which happens to be their own. I, in a sense, agree with that. I believe that suicide is the act of taking your own life in your own hands, and I believe that goes against God's will. However, there seem to be a few people who believe that if someone commits suicide, they just are not permitted into eternity with Jesus. It's just, yeah. I, on the other hand, don't see this as black and white as they do. There are no scriptures that are for or against this belief, so I don't believe that anyone can be so 100% sure on this issue. I do want to put out a disclaimer, though. I am not giving any endorsement for suicide. This isn't me saying, if you commit suicide, go ahead, you're going to heaven anyway. That is the wrong mentality and is putting God to the test, which the Bible clearly states as a sin. That is the wrong way of thinking. What I am saying is what I believe Peter Furler is trying to say in this song, which I'll get back to in a minute. As we go into the final chorus, our narrator seems to have come to a point of reconciliation, hope, and of peace.
Silence all, now go to sleep. The water's free, the well is deep. How can we return that which we never could earn? And God, I long to see her face. We haven't a hope beyond your grace. I know that you will overcome evil. For God.
Peter Furler said in regards to the purpose behind the song, in this song, we wanted to address the question, what happens to Christians that commit suicide? It was a question that stirred up that business concerning Vince Ebo. God's grace is sufficient. A lot of times there is a double message. God's grace is something we can't overlook because His grace is so powerful. It's not in any works or anything we can do to maybe take away salvation, besides blaspheming the Holy Spirit. What it seems that this song is trying to say is that concerning whether believers are welcomed into eternal paradise after taking their own lives, we may never know until we meet God in heaven. Our lives are in God's hands. Right from the start of being Christians, our faith is all about the things that we can't see or know for certain. And I believe this is just another part of that. As the narrator in the song states, our hope is in His grace. As Christians, we need to have faith that God will be both merciful and just in what He decides. Let us not condemn and let us not be certain of our own hopeful assumptions. we can only have hope in God's grace. I have a particular love for this song because it does things that is so missing in Christian music today. It takes on a topic that few are willing to talk about and raises uncomfortable questions. It gives awareness to the people around us who are probably dealing with these feelings of depression and suicidal thoughts. It dives into grief and goes down some pretty dark paths that few Christian artists are willing to go down. This is my second favorite song from the Newsboys, next to their song Lost the Plot, which I would love to make a video of someday in the future. This isn't a Newsboys song that many people know about or talk about, especially since it is over 20 years old. It is very much appreciated by old school fans like myself. However, it hasn't been included in any hits albums, and I don't think they've played this song live since the 90s. And since the Newsboys don't seem to have a desire to write songs like this again, I wanted to make this video to, I guess, bring awareness to it and hopefully put it in the spotlight again to Christian audiences. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I know it's different from my previous videos, but this is something that I really felt passionate about. I really enjoyed making this video, and I plan on making more essay type videos like this in the future, so we'll see. And I knew I wanted to make a video about this song more than it just being a review, but there's a lot of interesting backstory that I wanted to get into. So before we end the video, I have a couple things that I wanted to share. Since I am not a huge YouTube channel or anything, I of course don't have any sponsors. However, I am now an Amazon affiliate, which means I can share products from Amazon.com to you to recommend for you to buy. And if you go through the links that I give in the description, I will get a certain percentage of it if you buy that album. So I'd really appreciate it if you consider these. And I'm always going to be recommending products that I actually do care about. One is, they're both kind of related to the subject of this video. One is just the Going Public album by the Newsboys, which the song LEG is from. Like I mentioned before, it's a very influential album. It was a game changer for Christian music at the time. And it's just great. It's got some great classic songs on there that I highly recommend if you want to check out some good, catchy Christian songwriting. You can download it, or you can order a used CD, whatever you want to do. Another album that I want to recommend to you is an album by Tyson Motzenbacher, Letters to Lost Loves. This came out a few years ago. Tyson Motzenbacher is one of my favorites in Christian music right now. He's signed with Tooth and Nail Records. He wrote an album, and even though it doesn't really have anything to do with suicide, it is a lot about grief, because the whole entire album was written about his grief going through the passing of his mother. And like LEG, it brings up a lot of tough questions and a lot of frustrations that he was going through at the time. And it's just really interesting, and it's really challenging, and I highly recommend it. Letters to Lost Loves. Again, you can download the MP3, or you can order the CD through Amazon.
Maybe he is occupied with other people's wars, or he's organized militia to fight the war on Christmas, or Maybe he's protecting our children from the gays who have promised to destroy this utopia we've made. In his name.
I would really appreciate if you could in some way help support me. If you're interested in either of these albums, I definitely recommend going through the links that I have in the description below. That's all I have for you. Got some video ideas coming up. Thanks again for watching this one, and I'll talk to you guys later. Whoa, hey, that sure was a lot of fun. I sure learned a lot today. Did you? Well, hey, if you want to learn more, be sure to check out these links that are going to appear on the screen right now. So go check those out. Go check out the Podwood Forecast podcast. Go check out my other videos. And be sure to subscribe so that you can become Clifford today, too. Bye.